The Void. Greetings, mortals. It is I, Chaos, and this is the extended explanation of the Void. I will say a quick rundown and extended rundown, and I will include the statistics for my own quote unquote invention of the Void. So, we start with the non-formal description of the void. So, the void is an endless expanse of infinite space. You know how real world terms space it has no gravity, there is no up, down, left, right, forward, back. You could literally go infinity in any direction, or so we think. Well, think of the void exactly like that. And instead of planets and astral bodies and such, there's just ichoric balls every now and then. There is no systematic way these float around or form. They just are. So you have them in varying sizes between like the smallest moon to like Jupiter sized or bigger, maybe the sun sized on rare occasions. And this is like the primary land in the void. So the void has all these creatures that live in it made up of the same substance called Ichor, or it's like Ichor. I don't really know what to call it, but they all are made of the same thing. But unlike the regular version of the Ichor, this is like a sentient version. Hence the creatures, because the creatures are made of nothing but the Ichor. Kind of like how in Dungeons and Dragons, the genies will kind of like once dead, they just dissipate into nothing and only leave equipment behind. So if you would imagine like cutting off a genie's arm, you would see like nothing but the element there. Kind of think of like the creatures the same way. They have no bones. They are just ichor with like sentience. But unlike most shape shifting blobs, these are like set in their shape. They won't be able to like shape shift. The creature they are is the creature they are. And yeah, these creatures can uh, eventually evolve into something stronger. Most of the time, it won't do that unless they are in the series of a creature. For example, I'm going to use one of the creatures as an example. There's a crawler, a tiny centipede like creature. It has two more evolution stages. So if it's gonna evolve, it's more than likely gonna turn into each of those in time. But on super rare occasions, it might turn from a crawler into something completely else, like a thumper, another creature I have. I will explain more about my creatures and more about my inventions later on. You just gotta stay tuned. But back to the void itself, we'll start going into more specifics to really help solidify the understanding of it. The void is an optional plane for advanced campaigns. The void is a dimension underlying, behind, and within all other planes and worlds. It is not a mirror realm nor a spatial counterpart. Instead, it is a formless, directionless substrate from which all other realities are separated by thin membranes of conceptual structure. While ever present, the void is not easily breached, Only naturally occurring weak spots or deliberate planar manipulation allow passage. The plane of chaos often have small portals leading to and from the void. So, that little introduction to it, think of it like a mix of the ethereal plane from Dungeons and Dragons and like from Stranger Things, the Upside Down. How everything was kind of like a mirror. But unlike both of those, the void has no actual reflection. The only like quote unquote reflection there is wherever a portal is, it has a corresponding point. A good term I like to use, if you would know it, is in Minecraft between the overworld and the nether. Each nether portal coexists with a location on uh, both realms, no matter where it is. So, you think of it like that. The void is like the background of everything. You can open a portal and you'll come out in a location anywhere on the world you are on, or even on other worlds or realities. Dimensions, it doesn't matter. Even dimensions from worlds have the void. Example in Dungeons and Dragons, you got the Forgotten Realms, and then you have dimensions from the Forgotten Realms, like Mount Celestia. The void is both behind the Forgotten Realms and Mount Celestia. So it's essentially everywhere, but practically invisible. Most worlds would never even know it exists, except for the occasional invasions from the void creatures from random rifts tearing through the fabric of space. Now, the nature of the void. There's no gravity except on spheres. The like ichoric balls. The void possession the void possesses no natural gravity. Only the surfaces of ichor spheres exert gravitational pull, drawing creatures toward their centers. Away from spheres, movement resembles drifting in a three-dimensional space with no sense of up or down, like actual space from our world. Except you can breathe, unlike this world space, because more or less there's oxygen kind of everywhere. But you'll understand a little bit more as we go on. Absence of time and distance. Time does not flow in the void. Duration-based effects cease unless tied to a conscious source. Distance has no fixed meaning. 2 points may appear near or infinitely far depending on their conceptual alignment with surrounding realities. This is like the ethereal plane, the deep ethereal. Remember how if you ever really paid attention in the Dungeon Master's Guide, how in the deep ethereal, it does not matter how far you travel, time differs no matter what, and distance it has no true meaning. It's the same way in this. The only real meaning of distance in the void is like your immediate relevant distance, probably like on a sphere, and portals from realities. Omnipresent dim light. Although lacking a sun, stars, or visible sources of illumination, the entire void is bathed in a soft, dim glow emanating from nowhere. This light allows creatures to see great distances with ease, far more than they could in a normal dim environment. Spheres, drifting figures, and distant void can often be seen from miles away, though fine detail still remains indistinct at long range. So remember how I said about like the dim light? Yeah. Just imagine being able to see like with dark vision, but you still could see colors. It's kind of like that. It's kind of hard to describe. It's just like everything kind of has an outline, and you could see stuff, and then even in your immediate distance, you can see colors. So it's like there's no real need for light in the plane. Ichor itself. Ichor is the foundational substance of the void in three different forms: spatial, flowing, and condensed. All ichor is inimical to ordinary matter. Now we'll describe each of the ichor types in like little like a table type of thing. So spatial ichor is kind of like a gas. Spatial ichor fills the void like an acrid atmosphere. It's a hazard. A creature exposed to spatial ichor takes 1d6 acid damage per minute of exposure. So kind of just like think you're kind of like breathing in like a very weak poison, airborne poison. Like it's noticeable and cause harm to you over time, like radiation, but it's not like instantly. Movement in the spatial ichor. As spatial as air, you can easily move through it. Flying through it is much harder and requires a normal strength of will. So, a lot of the void requires mental strength. I also took a little bit of inspiration from Limbo, the dimensional plane in D&D. So you know how the Githzuri monks can like create fortresses and shape matter into other type of matter, and you can like kind of fly. Well, imagine it like that. You can do essentially the same thing, like fly and shape the void, but it's like 100 times harder since it's the prime force of the multiverse. It's untamable. Everything and nothing is within it at once. Flying would be easier, obviously, but it's still super hard. Properties of spatial ichors. Weak and diffuse, a mild poison compared to the other ichor states. Spatial ichor accumulates to form flowing ichor. So imagine like in the atmosphere, have all the water droplets forming to actually produce rain. Think of it like super, super diffuse spatial ichor. You don't even notice it's there. And it kind of just like forms together to create flowing ichor. Flowing ichor composes most of the void's spheres. Intelligent creatures can walk upon it naturally, though the substance remains hazardous. So think of it like walking on water, right? Creatures can walk on it naturally, but it will like you can stand on it as if you're walking on water, but it's still poisonous and well, not poisonous, but acidic. Hazard: contact deals 3d6 acid damage per round. Straightforward. Basically, flowing ichor is a super corrosive material that breaks down anything in contact with it other than other ichor. Organic stuff corrodes or melts faster than non-organic material. But no matter what it is, if it's not ichor, it will corrode it back into ichor. Movement. Moving on it requires DC 12 athletics or dexterity acrobatics. Check to maintain footing unless the creature is adapted. So basically what that means is think of like walking through light mud. Yeah, you can essentially walk on it pretty easy, but you still got to make sure you're not like slipping or getting sucked down from standing still too long, because it will try and hold you in place to, speed up the process of corrosion a little faster. And creatures adapted to it would be like the ichor creatures. Yeah, they can't be consumed by it, but they can still be like muddled down by it a little bit, unless they're like specifically adapted to it, which they are because they live there. So being adapted to it would basically mean any non-ichoric creatures would pretty much not be adapted to it. Gravity. A sphere's surface exerts gravity toward the center, like a normal planet. Flowing ichor is far more potent than spatial ichor due to its condensed nature. Then we have condensed ichor. It's like a solid. It's rare, opaque masses often found within flowing spheres. Condensed ichor is the center of all spheres, and very rarely can it be found on top of a sphere. So think of it like a map. The spatial ichor is all around. Then you have the flowing ichor in spheres, and then the condensed ichor in the center, pulling everything toward it, making the spheres bigger. Movement is treated as solid ground because it's solid, it's no longer flowing. Durability, it's functionally indestructible except by void level forces. So basically, condensed ichor, smash condensed ichor, both breaks apart. Gravity has strong magnetic force for ichor, the force becoming stronger the larger the piece of condensed ichor. Interaction with the void. The void responds faintly to will and intellect, sharing distant similarities with the ethereal plane and limbo. However, it is more resistant to mental influence, like I had described earlier. Mental movement. Attempts to propel oneself by mental force alone, such as intelligent checks to use like wings or will, are extremely difficult. Such checks, when allowed, are a high difficulty class, typically 25 plus. Success is rare and unreliable, with failure typically results in drift until a sphere pulls you in. Morphing ichor by will. Unlike limbo, where thought readily shapes chaos into matter, ichor resists alteration. Spatial, flowing, and especially condensed ichor cannot be reshaped by ordinary mental effort. Only exceptional beings, such as certain voided, which is the term for the creatures, or chaos. Yeah, I'm part of the multiverse. Can warp ichor through pure thought. It requires extraordinary effort to do repeatedly, so most cannot manage it. Corrosion. Ichor destroys mundane matter rapidly. The dungeon master determines how quickly equipment deteriorates, but flowing ichor is especially destructive. Disorientation. Creatures unused to directionless environments must make a DC 12 wisdom saving throw each minute or become disoriented, suffering disadvantage on perception checks and attack rolls until they find stable footing on a sphere. And if you become accustomed to the void, all of this is null. So, like, maybe spend what feels like a week in there, or maybe a month. It really depends on the person themselves. So, you gotta really look at your characters and see, like, okay, would they become to this really weird multiverse dimension in a week? Or more or less a week, because number time doesn't matter. Or would it take them forever to get accustomed? Rifts and conceptual alignment. A rift between a plane and the void connects 2 points based not on geometry, but on conceptual alignment. A creature entering from a material plane may emerge upside down or sideways without any consistent orientation at a location that correlates symbolically, magically, or narratively to the entrance point. Physical direction plays no role whatsoever. Opening a rift. Intentional portals require powerful magic or manipulation of planar structure. Because every location in the multiverse corresponds to a conceptual location in the void, a caster can breach through it if they understand the symbolic or narrative anchor point of the target. Orientation is never preserved. Entering the void. Common methods to enter the void include crossing a natural weak point, like how you cross into the Shadowfell, or fey crossing by like finding unique spots. Being pulled in through a planar breach, which is those spontaneous rifts which void invade other material realms that I talked about. Or powerful magic opening a rift. Like maybe like 4 or 5 wish spells cast at once to do the exact same thing. If you ever try and attempt that in a campaign naturally, be really careful because even if one person pronounces a word wrong or skips a word, the whole thing goes awry. Because it has to be exact same spell. It's such a strong force. Exiting the void. Creatures may leave through the same rift they entered, any weak spot aligned conceptually with their position, a deliberately created portal. Basically all the same stuff as entering, but kind of opposite. Okay. Well, essentially that's it for the void. I will be making so many more videos and shorts on the creatures, the way the void itself is like an environment. But these are basically the statistics for the void. Comment if you have any questions. Like and subscribe if you do want to hear more about the void, the creatures, or just about the content I make in general. Until the next video, farewell, mortals.